Imagine a gang so feared that even the biggest rappers had to check in before stepping into Miami. We're talking about Zoe Pound, a name that had the streets shook and the music industry on lock. These weren't just street soldiers. They hijacked ships, kidnapped artists, and caught 40 bodies in just 18 months. Yeah, 40. And they didn't care who you were. Lil Wayne, Birdman, Lil Flip, everybody had to play by their rules or pay the price. So, how did Zoe Pound run the game for years without getting caught? Join us as we go all the way back and dive into the real chaos behind the headlines. From drug deals to dice games to straight up extortion, this isn't no rap beef. This is organized street warfare. Zoe Pound wasn't just a gang, it was survival. It started in Miami around 1990, born out of the struggles Haitian immigrants faced every single day. These were families escaping poverty back in Haiti, only to land in rough neighborhoods in Florida where life wasn't much easier. They came to America chasing a better life, but instead of peace, they found more struggle, no money, no English, and a whole lot of violence. Kids growing up in places like Little Haiti and Carol City were bullied, beat down, and pushed around in schools. Haitian teens especially were targeted for their accents and backgrounds. They didn't blend in, and it cost them, so they stopped trying. That's when everything changed. In Little Haiti, a man named Jimmy Casimir, better known on the streets as Mac Zoe, had enough. He formed the Sable Boys. It started off as a way to defend themselves, just Haitian kids sticking together to protect each other, but unity quickly turned into power. Mac Zoe wasn't the type to back down. He had heart, he had grit, and soon he had soldiers too. In no time, the Sable Boys were going head-to-head with local cliques like the Sap Boys, and the battle for Little Haiti turned into a war. Over in Carol City, things were no different. Another Haitian youth, Ali Adam, who went by Zoe, was building his own crew. He brought the Haitian community together under the name Carol City Haitians, or CCH. Like Mac, Zoe had no fear in his blood. He was cut from the same cloth, and he knew one thing: if you didn't fight back in Carol City, you wouldn't last. So he made sure they did. Once high school ended, both Mac Zoe and Ali Adam had one goal: get money. But their paths split. They both had ambition, but they chased the bag in different ways. While one leaned more toward survival, the other leaned hard into domination. That's how Zoe Pound was born. It wasn't just about protection anymore. This was about power, control, and respect. By the mid-90s, Zoe Pound became one of the most feared gangs in Miami. Their name came with weight. Zoe stood for their Haitian roots, tough like bone, and Pound was all about that unity and force. Power of unified Negroes in divinity. Whether on the streets or behind bars, when someone said Zoe Pound, people listened or ran. They ran the streets by doing whatever it took. Drug deals, house invasions, armed robberies, you name it. If it made money, they were in it. But over time, some of the older members started to fall back. They felt like the mission had changed. What was once about money turned into bloodshed. To them, it wasn't about the hustle anymore. It was just about catching bodies. Kill or be killed. That shift turned a lot of them away. But even as the violence grew, Zoe Pound got smarter. They knew how to move low-key. They started organizing better. They took real control over Little Haiti and other neighborhoods. They weren't just out there wilding, they moved in silence. Some members even started making money the legal way, but that didn't mean the streets got quiet. While some went clean, others kept pushing. They spread out into nearby states, places like Alabama, trying to keep the Zoe name alive in new territory. Police called it a smart move, a new chapter. Zoe Pound wasn't done. They were just getting more strategic. Then there was DDA Wright. He and his crew were another set of Zoes trying to bounce back after Miami heat got too hot. Cops were cracking down hard, so they started looking for a new home. They hit state after state until they landed in Los Santos, San Andreas. But what they found there wasn't what they hoped for. The local Little Haiti wasn't all Haitians. It was filled with people of Mexican descent and other groups. That didn't sit right with the Zoe Pound crew. They felt like outsiders in a place that should have been theirs. So they turned up the pressure, violence, intimidation. Zoe Pound got real vicious, doing everything they could to run other races out and take over the block. They wanted dominance and they weren't asking for it. By this point, Zoe Pound wasn't just feared in Miami. They had a rep nationwide. These weren't just thugs, they were soldiers, organized, brutal, and ready to do whatever it took to stay on top. And when they started messing with the music industry, that fear hit a whole new level. They weren't playing. Stories came out about how Zoe Pound members were robbing rappers, snatching chains and pressing up on people who thought they were untouchable. One name kept coming up, Lil Wayne. People said he got extorted, his jewelry taken, his car set on fire. And it wasn't just Wayne. Birdman's name was floating around too. Zoe Pound wasn't scared of status. If you had money and no muscle, they were coming. For you, even other rappers started talking. In an interview, Boosie spoke up about what he saw go down. They took Wayne's chain, he said, set his whip on fire. And when someone like Boosie talks like that, you know it's real. Zoe Pound wasn't bluffing. They wanted the industry to know. We're not fans, we're not groupies, we're street made. But their story didn't start with fame. It started with pain. It started in Haiti, a country proud of its rebellion, but drowning in poverty. Since the 1960s, Haiti had been the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Over 80% of the people lived below the poverty line. So when Haitians started fleeing to the US in the 60s and 70s, they weren't chasing dreams. They were running from survival, and most of them ended up in Miami. By the 1980s, over 200,000 Haitians had made their way to Dade County. They settled where it was cheap, Little Haiti and Carroll City. But those places were rough. Crime was high, jobs were low, parents couldn't speak English, and their kids got bullied in schools. Life hit hard, and the response was harder. That's why Zoe Pound was born, not out of greed, but out of desperation. Out of pride, out of pain. It started as protection, but it turned into domination. They weren't just trying to survive anymore, they wanted to run things, and for a while, they did. Zoe Pound, one man said, was the most feared operation in American history. Maybe that's a stretch, maybe not, but one thing's for sure. When Zoe Pound pulled up, people moved different. You see, before Zoe Pound became a name that made the streets shake, it started with one man trying to build something real. Ali Adam was posted up in Carroll City, and he wasn't just another kid on the block. He had brains, hustler type. He didn't just want to get rich, he wanted to stay rich and keep his people close while doing it. Early on, Ali jumped deep into the game. You know what kind of game? The one that makes fast money but comes with heavy risk. But Ali was smart with it. While others were loud, he stayed low, kept his name out of trouble, ran his side hustles quietly. His goal was to flip that street money into something clean, something that lasted. He wanted out, but not broke. On the other side of the city, there was Mac Zoe, who was a different kind of player. Mac was also stacking up cash, but his methods were straight reckless. No suits, no business plans, just action. Hitting licks with his Sable Boys crew, taking what they wanted, and never looking back. These dudes had no chill. They became known as one of the slimiest sets running through Miami, and Ali knew better than to get caught up with that kind of wild energy. He kept his distance. He knew rolling with Mac could either get him set up or attract attention he didn't need. Ali was focused on building an empire, not burning it down. But then came the summer of 1990. That was the year everything flipped. Rumors started flying through the streets that Ali had joined up with Mac Zoe. Word got to the Sap Boys, another crew with beef in their blood, and they didn't wait to ask questions. They just assumed Ali had picked sides. On July 6, 1990, the Sap Boys rolled deep into Carroll City, pulled up on 27th, where the CCH, Carroll City Haitians, used to hang. They saw multiple CCH members out there. Shots could have flown, but somehow no one got hit. Still, Ali was heated. He'd done everything to avoid mess like this, and now it was at his front door. The next day, Ali did something he never thought he'd do. He hit up Mac Zoe, asked for a sit-down, and Mac, he didn't hesitate. He was hyped. The meeting went down at Mac's headquarters. Ali showed up with his close circle and laid out the story. He told Mac what happened, how the Sap Boys were on his neck, and why they needed to move smart. After a deep talk, both sides agreed on something major. They would come together, merge their crews. Ali would handle the money and strategy. Mac would handle the muscle. Brains and brawn, side by side, a street yin and yang. Now they needed a name, something real, something with weight. That part didn't come easy. For a while, they just kept doing what they did, stacking, moving, growing. But in 1993, it finally clicked. They were all chilling one day when a track from Tha Dog Pound came on the radio. That's when a top member named Chubb suddenly shouted, "F the Dog Pound, this the Zoe Pound." And just like that, the name stuck. Zoe meant bone in Creole, a nod to strength and toughness. Pound, that was the force, the pressure. From that day on, Zoe Pound wasn't just a crew, it was a movement. But they didn't roll like other sets. They were smarter. Flashy colors? Nope. They repped one flag only, the Haitian flag. No rags hanging out pockets, no obvious symbols, no hand signs, no ink. That made them ghosts to the law. Cops couldn't pick them out of a crowd. They blended in with civilians, and that was the trick. That's why they moved under the radar while still running the game. They were the most dangerous gang in Florida, and most people didn't even know what they looked like. But those in the streets, oh, they knew, especially the Sap Boys. The beef got deep real fast. Between May of 1995 and August of 1996, the streets of Miami turned into a war zone. The word was Zoe Pound claimed 40 lives. Sap Boys who crossed the line or got in the way. 40 bodies in 18 months. That number had the whole city shook. The violence was surgical. No wild drive-bys or messy hits. These were calculated moves, the kind of thing you'd see in a movie, except this wasn't fiction. Then came August 5th, 1995. Cops had been watching closely. They moved in and arrested both Ali Adam and Zoe. Hit them with charges for 18 of those killings. It looked like the end of Zoe Pound, but the streets had other plans. After months of court battles, all the charges were dropped. Not enough evidence, no witnesses willing to talk. And just like that, they walked free. After 1996, the Sap Boys were done. Vanished, no more ops, no more pressure. Zoe Pound stood tall. The name had already become legend. And now, with no rivals left, they were ready to write their next chapter. After Ali Adam and Zoe joined forces and made Zoe Pound a name to fear, things eventually changed. They didn't need each other anymore. Their styles were just too different. So they split and went their own ways. Zoe, for one, didn't believe in spending to make money. His whole mindset was about taking. Get it for free, flip it fast, and move on. But don't let that fool you. Mac wasn't some street dummy. His plans were wild, but they were smart too. The kind of plans that needed inside info, perfect timing, and zero fear. Now here's the thing. Since way back in the 80s, the port of Haiti had been hot. Ships from Colombia were coming through there on the way to Miami. And if you know what usually comes from Colombia to Miami, then you already know what's up. These weren't just normal shipments. The port workers in Haiti were getting tipped off by the Colombians to look the other way. That's how the whole system worked. The workers knew which ships were dirty and when they'd be hitting the Miami coast. By now, Zoe Pound had spread its roots to Haiti, so Zoe made moves. He placed Zoe members to work the port, real low-key. They blended in, clocked in, and waited, and when the time came, they called. On March 4th, 1997, one of the Haitian Zoe workers hit up Mac with some serious heat. A massive cargo ship called Lars Dende was on its way to Miami. That thing was carrying over $6 million worth of, you know what? Zoe lit up. This was the kind of lick that could change everything. So he called up 4 trusted members and got to work. They spent the night cooking up the perfect plan to jack the whole shipment. To make it clean, they made sure the guard working that night at the Miami port was already paid off. So on March 5th, 11 p.m., the Lars Dende pulls up. Zoe Pound was ready to hit. As soon as the ship docked, Mac and his crew jumped on. No hesitation. They rounded up the whole crew and locked them inside the ship's cabin. Then Mac stepped up and demanded to be shown where the stash was hidden. Everything seemed locked down. But one man was missing. The ship's captain hadn't been caught. That one mistake cost everything. While the Zoes were deep inside the ship, the captain jumped into the water and swam straight to the shore. He made it to safety and called Miami police right away. Within the hour, it was on. Around 1 a.m., about 20 police units surrounded the ship. Mac and his crew had no choice. They gave up and were taken into custody. Now this looked like a wrap. Serious federal charges were expected, but here's where things got wild. The Lars Dende, the ship carrying all that weight, didn't want heat. They didn't want to be investigated. They told the cops it was all just a misunderstanding. Just like that, Zoe and his guys were released. The ship was never looked into, no questions, no headlines, nothing. But once you taste that kind of power, it's hard to stop. Mac wanted more. Just a few months later, on July 13th, he got another call. This time, it was about the Vanderpool Express, a ship just as big, carrying another serious shipment. But this time, the ship was already close. Mac didn't have time to plan, no blueprints, no security setups, but he still went for it. The next morning, July 14th, things got bloody. 4 members of the Vanderpool Express crew lost their lives. Whatever went down that night turned dark fast. Somehow, even with blood on the floor, Mac's charges were dropped again, but the system wasn't letting him walk forever. Just 1 month later, he got tied to another case. This time, the law stuck. After a long court fight, Zoe and his crew were hit with life sentences. That was the end of his run. But the damage wasn't just legal. The chaos Mac caused ended up ruining all the business moves Ali Adam had been working on. See, after their split, Ali had tried to clean up. He used his street money to invest. Quiet moves, businesses across Miami, a subway shop in Miami Lakes, a whole strip mall in Miami Gardens. He wasn't playing small ball. In fact, the FBI believed Ali's net worth was around $11 million by 1999. That was serious bread, especially back then. But with the mess Mac caused, everything Ali built was at risk. The name Zoe Pound started ringing for all the wrong reasons. So by 99, Ali stepped away from the game. He was done, retired from the lifestyle that made him rich but always brought danger. Still, the clean life wasn't all it was cracked up to be. For someone like Ali, the streets had a pull that business deals couldn't match. No excitement, no edge. It was slow, safe, but boring. That's when Ali started thinking again. He wasn't the kind of guy to just fade away. He had one more play in mind, something big, something bold, something only a former Zoe Pound leader could pull off. So what did he do? You see, after stepping away from the streets, Ali Adam wasn't looking to disappear. He just wanted to flip the game. That's when he launched House of Fire, Miami's brand new record label. At the time, other cities had their rap kings. Cash Money was taking over New Orleans, Rap-A-Lot ran Houston, and So Def had Atlanta locked. But Miami, it had no voice in the industry. And Ali saw that as his chance to take over the rap world the same way he once took over the streets. But there was one big issue. Miami didn't have enough talent to make labels pay attention. Nobody in the industry was watching House of Fire. That disrespect didn't sit right with Ali. He wasn't used to being ignored, so he took matters into his own hands. If they wouldn't respect his label, then they would respect the name Zoe Pound. And that's when things changed. From then on, Ali made it known. Any rapper entering Miami had to check in with Zoe Pound. It wasn't a request. It was the rule. The first crew to follow it was Birdman and his whole Cash Money team. What happened next would surprise a lot of people. Instead of drama, a bond was built. In 2001, Birdman got tied up in a dice game with a few Zoe Pound members. He lost $50,000, but instead of pressing him, Ali covered the debt himself. That move shocked everyone, but it wasn't just kindness. That was strategy. With one favor, Ali locked in a relationship with Cash Money, and in return, he expected loyalty. Ali's good deed came with an unspoken contract, one insider later said. It wasn't street extortion in the usual sense, but it was definitely pressure. In return for protection, Ali expected big artists like Birdman's crew to record features with House of Fire's rising stars. It was business, but the street version. And if anyone refused, they'd be dealing with all of Zoe Pound. That threat alone made most rappers stay in line, but not everyone got the message. Fast forward to 2004, and Houston rapper Lil Flip was riding high. Hits like Sunshine and Game Over had him everywhere. He was one of the most wanted artists in the game, and Ali had already worked with him before. In 2003, he had booked Lil Flip for just $10,000. But by 2004, Flip's price had jumped to $75,000 per show. Even with the rising cost, Flip gave Ali a deal, $60,000. They both agreed, and Ali booked him again. Posters went up all over Miami. The hype was real. The show sold out overnight. Everyone in the city was ready to see Lil Flip live. For Ali, this wasn't just business, it was personal. It was about his reputation in the industry and on the streets. But then just one night before the event, everything went sideways. Ali got a call from Lil Flip's management. They told him Flip wasn't going to make it. No real reason, just that he wouldn't be performing. Ali was stunned. Not only had he sent a $20,000 deposit already, but now he was going to have to deal with an angry crowd and a ruined name. Flip's team said they'd send the deposit back, but for Ali that wasn't enough, not even close. Ali told them straight. He wanted $50,000 for the mess, for the damage to his name, for the loss. But Flip's manager wasn't hearing it. He hung up on Ali. That was the biggest mistake they could have made. Ali wasn't the type to let disrespect slide. He called back one more time and gave a final warning. Either send the money or Zoe Pound's coming for Lil Flip. Flip's team didn't believe the threat. They hung up again. But what they didn't know was that now Lil Flip had a target on his back. Zoe Pound wasn't bluffing. Word got around fast, and it reached a heavy name in the music game, Jimmy Henchman, a known power player with deep ties in the streets and the studio. Jimmy had respect for Ali and Zoe Pound, and he knew how serious things were about to get. So he picked up the phone and called another heavyweight, J Prince, the boss of Houston, and the man behind the label Lil Flip was signed to. J Prince didn't waste time. He called Ali personally and promised the $50,000 would be sent. Ali listened, but he also waited. Days went by. Then weeks, still no money. Eventually, Ali reached out again, asking Flip's team what the deal was. That's when Flip's camp made a new offer, $22,000. That number was a joke to Ali. He hung up without saying much, but the silence was louder than any words. 2 weeks later, Ali got the call he'd been waiting for. Someone told him that Lil Flip was coming to Miami, not for a show, but for an overnight studio session with the famous producer Scott Storch. And guess where the studio was? Right next to Little Haiti. That was Zoe Pound's backyard. No security could protect Flip there. At 10 p.m., Flip touched down in Miami. He was riding in a 2004 Maserati. Clean, expensive, flashy, just like a rapper on top of the world should be. He pulled up to the studio at midnight, but what he didn't know was that 4 members of Zoe Pound were already waiting outside. And this time, it wasn't about business. It was about sending a message. It was 4 in the morning when Lil Flip walked out of Scott Storch's studio, thinking it was just another night in Miami. But 4 Zoe Pound members had been camped across the street for hours, waiting in silence. As Flip approached his Maserati, they moved in fast. He didn't even get to touch the door. They grabbed him and threw him into their car. No time to argue. The destination was clear, the White House, a known Zoe Pound spot. And waiting inside was none other than Ali Adam himself. Ali didn't waste time. He looked Flip in the eye and reminded him of that $50,000. Flip had no backup, no choice. So he gave in. He agreed to pay. The whole thing stayed quiet for years, just whispers in the streets, until Zoe Pound dropped a book in 2020 and finally confirmed what had gone down. But that was just one part of a much bigger game Ali was playing. In 2005, everything changed. Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and wrecked the city. Cash Money's home base was destroyed and they had to move fast. The whole label, Birdman, Lil Wayne, everybody, relocated to Miami. And since they already had strong ties with Zoe Pound, the transition went smooth. But smooth wasn't free. Ali was already planning his next move. He had a new artist on deck named Basil Knight. He believed Basil was the next one to blow, and he wanted Lil Wayne to help him out with a feature. At first, Wayne brushed it off, said he was busy. Ali waited a few weeks and called again. This time, Wayne said he wasn't in town. The third time, he hung up the phone. That was the last straw. Ali didn't like getting played. He chomped a gangster, Ali said later. That disrespect stung. Still, because of the history with Birdman, Ali gave Wayne one final shot. A year passed. It was now 2006. Wayne was in Miami, getting tatted up at the Hit Factory. Somehow, Ali got word, and he pulled up. He didn't come alone. His crew was with him, and the vibe was icy. Ali walked in like he owned the place. "What's up, Lil D?" he said. Wayne didn't flinch. "What's up?" he replied. He knew why Ali was there, no point pretending. Ali handed him a CD, Basil's music. Wayne popped it in and listened for a minute. Then he paused it and looked up. "Tell your boy to step up his game if he wants to mess with me." Ali was fuming. He didn't show it at first. He tried to keep it business. Offered a new idea. Maybe Wayne could mentor Basil, show him how to level up. Wayne shook his head. "I don't have time for this," he said. That was it. Ali walked straight up to him and snatched the diamond chains off his neck. No words, just action. And then came the warning. "You got 24 hours to leave Miami or Zoe Pound's coming for you." Wayne didn't move. He stayed, like he wasn't scared. But that decision set off a storm. Within the next 48 hours, the Cash Money tour bus was hit up 67 times. Let that sink in. 67. Gunshots ringing out like a war zone. But it didn't stop there. 2 days later, Lil Wayne's Rolls-Royce Phantom went up in flames, set on fire in the middle of the city. No guessing who did it. Zoe Pound was sending a message loud and clear. The music industry started to panic. This wasn't rap beef. This was real. Serious people started trying to calm things down. Even Russell Simmons, one of the biggest names in hip-hop, stepped in to try and cool it, but nothing worked. The war was on. Cash Money versus Zoe Pound. And it wasn't looking good. Then the same name came back around. Jimmy Henchman. He was the only one who ever managed to get through to Ali. A respected figure in the music world and on the streets, Jimmy flew down to Miami to fix things before someone got killed. He sat down with Ali and made a deal, a big one. Lil Wayne would have to give Zoe Pound a shout out in his music. Let the world know who ran Miami. And on top of that, he had to pay $180,000. Now some say the money part might be a stretch, but that's what Zoe Pound claimed in their book. Whether it's true or not, one thing's for sure, the beef cooled off after that. But that moment proved one thing. Zoe Pound wasn't just a street gang. They had reach, they had control, and they were ready to check anybody. even a superstar like Lil Wayne. Once the deal with Lil Wayne finally went through, tensions began to cool, at least for a while. Wayne and Ali crossed paths again at a party thrown by DJ Khaled. Things seemed calm on the surface. Wayne even went a step further and signed Ali's rapper Briscoe just to smooth things out and show respect. That was a big move and helped squash the heat. In fact, after that moment, Zoe Pound started showing a lot of love to Jimmy Henchman too, since he was the one who helped fix the situation. And as part of the agreement, Wayne began shouting out Zoe Pound on multiple tracks. If you know what songs those are, drop them in the comments. But the truth is, what happened with Wayne was just the tip of the iceberg. Zoe Pound had been extorting the rap game for years, and there are probably more stories than we'll ever hear. They were pulling strings behind the scenes and staying untouchable the whole time. Police tried, but Zoe Pound always seemed to stay one step ahead. That started to change in 2007. It was September 1st, and we're now in Lee County, a swampy patch of southwest Florida. Some call it the Fresno of Florida. Others would argue the Panhandle is worse. Either way, it's not the kind of place where you expect a big takedown. But that's exactly where things started to fall apart. On that day, 4 Zoe Pound members were headed down I-75 toward Bonita Springs. They were on their way to do business with 3 locals. These men, Scott Highfill, Robert Barkley, and Willard Graham, had long records and shady reputations going back to the 80s. But the Zoe members didn't know all that. They thought it was just another deal. So they pulled up to a nice house on Esplanade Street at around 3 p.m. The vibe seemed normal at first. Zoe Pound brought their product inside and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20, but no cash was coming their way. Instead of paying up, the 3 men forced them out of the house. The Zoes left without throwing hands, but it wasn't over, not even close. What those 3 guys didn't realize was that Zoe Pound wasn't the kind of crew you could cross and walk away from. The 4 Zoes drove back to Miami, furious. They met with their boss and told him everything. No hesitation, the green light was given. They were heading back to Bonita Springs, and this time, it wasn't for talk. The very next day, September 2nd, they returned. No games. They pulled up outside the same house and waited for the 3 men to show their faces. And when they did, the Zoes made their move. What happened next? It wasn't just payback, it was a warning. After the job was done, the Zoe Pound crew rolled back to Miami. But this time, they got sloppy. They forgot to cover their tracks. That mistake would cost them everything. Within 2 days, the case started falling apart in the worst way. One of the 4, Wesnell Isaac, fled the country and ran back to Haiti. He was quickly added to the FBI's top 10 most wanted list of 2007. The heat was on. Eventually, the feds tracked him down overseas. All 4 members involved were arrested, and this is where it got ugly. 2 of them flipped, became confidential informants. Now in Florida, that's more common than you'd think. But for a gang like Zoe Pound, this was major. That kind of betrayal brought the walls crashing in. Those informants led the feds straight to Ali Adam. In 2009, he was finally arrested and charged with racketeering. The man who once ran Miami's streets and rubbed shoulders with rap royalty was handed a 30-year sentence. That was the biggest blow Zoe Pound had ever taken. But as always, the streets don't stay quiet for long. A new generation was already waiting in the shadows. Unlike before, they don't move loud. No flashy plays, no headlines. Today's Zoe Pound keeps a low profile. You won't find them showing off or making noise, and that's what makes them just as dangerous. You see, Zoe Pound wasn't just a gang. It was a movement that shook the streets and the music industry alike. From hijacking ships to pressing rap icons, they built a name on fear, power, and precision. Even when leaders like Ali Adam fell, the Zoe legacy didn't die. It just went quiet. The streets may not talk much now, but behind the silence, there's always something moving. One thing's for sure, Zoe Pound left a mark that still has Miami and hip-hop looking over its shoulder. Do you think Zoe Pound's influence in the music industry is still alive today? Which rapper do you think was most scared to check in with Zoe Pound? Let us know what you think in the comments box below. And if you liked how we presented you this video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.